we are going to do a Holland Haven site guide. And we're going to start off by showing you where Holland Haven is. So where's Holland Haven, Steve?
So Holland Haven's northeast Essex. So you've got Walton on the Naze, where your Frinton-on-Sea is. Walton on the Naze is up to the right of there. And then you've got Holland-on-Sea, and then Clacton is just sort of south of there. So sandwiched between Walton on the Naze and Clacton.
Okay, and Holland Haven Country Park is kind of this bit down here, really.
Yeah.
But we're covering the area that's sort of in this light blue, so all the way around here. Should we start?
Let's start. Yep.
Okay. So I started off by telling a lie, because the first place we're going to is actually outside the blue area. It's over here. So we're going to the Chippings lay-by very quickly. If people have ever heard any of these terms, one of the points of this is to show people where these locations are. Yep. Because there's lots of names for various places, and often people don't know where they are. So the Chippings lay-by is on the main road, and it's called the Chippings lay-by because there are some sort of chippings through here. As you can see, Steve is having a quick scan, and it's just useful to have a scan from there, isn't it, quickly?
So yeah, it's really good. And this winter was pretty good. There was a family of, or certainly 3 Hooper swans. But it's a good place to scan for things like swans and geese before you get to the country park and Holland Haven area in general. And also you're quite raised up as well. You're on a bit of high ground, so you've got a fantastic view of the whole area. So always worth a brief stop, especially if you're coming in from the north.
Yeah.
From the sort of the
stop and a scan.
Yep.
So then we're actually onto the main part of the site here. So the little wiggly line. So the Chippings lay-by was up here. Don't forget. Little wiggly line is the entrance to the main Holland Haven Country Park. And the car park at the end of the approach road, you've got 2 options. You can kind of go left or right, but both of them you have to pay. And the pay machine is the other end of the picture, just over here. There's another one, I think, halfway along as well. But it's always worth, once you've parked up, if you can, to turn around and have a walk back along the approach road, because Absolutely. The bushes there can be pretty good, can't they?
Yeah, it's very good. Autumn and spring for warblers, things like firecrest and yellow-browed warblers and flycatchers often, can be found along there. It's always worth a walk. I mean, obviously, be careful as you're walking along there because it is the main entrance road. But yeah, it's well worth checking the scrub there for certainly for small birds.
Over at the back here was when I had my first ever yellow-browed warbler, which I knew had been on the site. I'd gone down to try and find it on my own and didn't find it, and a bit fed up. Had to be back home, so I drove out and I had the windows down on the car, and I heard it calling. So yeah, that was good. Right. Then from the car park, so that's the blob of the car park. We're going to leave the blobs from the main site on the map each time. So if you do want to watch this back, hopefully it should build up a picture of the whole site. So from the main car park, you can kind of head sort of southish, southeast, and go to the dell. So the dell is a really nice area. This is looking up from the top of the dell. You've got some steps on the left-hand side here that lead down into the dell. And you may have noticed at the back of the dell, so this is the view once you're down. Those are the steps coming down. They're a bit steep, so be careful if you come down that way. There is a slope. If you walk further around, it makes it slightly easier access. But you may have noticed from the first picture that there is a toilet block in the dell, which is always quite a handy stop-off point as long as they're open. So that's always useful to know that they're there. But what's the dell good for, Steve?
It's really good because it's quite sheltered. You can see there it's got quite sort of steep banks. So if it's quite a windy day, there's always a bit of shelter in there. So really good for warblers. It's probably actually the best place at the Holland Haven for wryneck. I think there's been quite a lot of records of wryneck. Probably more records in the dell than anywhere else, I think, at Holland Haven. Yeah, it's just always worth a check. Good for thrushes, winter thrushes. Redback shrike has been seen there a few times over the years. So yeah, always worth just a stand and just wait and see if anything pops up there.
Yep, excellent. So that's the dell. And then from the dell, you can kind of walk up the slope. So that's the little wiggly line here. And you can walk along a little bit to the Sea-Watch shelter. Now, before you get to the Sea-Watch shelter, on the right, there's some steps that lead down to the beach. And this is always a nice place to visit, isn't it, Steve? If it's open, of course.
Yeah, okay, we won't go down that route, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, yes. So it does. If you want refreshments, it's always a good place to get a cup of tea or coffee. They do nice cake or a bacon roll or something like that. And yeah, and it's also, if you've got westerly winds, it's quite sheltered down there, and can be in the sun. So yeah, nice little stop off a bite to eat.
And incidentally, you can walk back along the main road this way. We haven't covered it on this guide, but these bushes up the top here can sometimes be worth covering as well, because birds that fly in off will quite often just land in these bushes if they're exhausted. So that's always worth a look. But back to the main part of the site. So as we're walking past the cafe now. We've left it behind us, and you can see the Clacton-on-Sea sailing pub. And then just beyond that is the sea watching shelter. And this has recently been completely renovated, and it's really nice actually. And that is what you can do from it. You can watch the sea.
Exactly. Yeah. So really good. If you've got a bit of shelter, as Matt said, it's been renovated now, so you can get a good half a dozen people in there, and this is the view you're going to get. So yeah, you've got the wind farms in the distance. So you've got some nice marker. You've got the generating station there in the middle. So you've got some nice marker points for if you're sea watching. And because you're nice and high up, you do get a very good view of the sea. So yeah, good. That's probably the number one sea watching spot on Holland Haven.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously you need your scopes really if you're going to do some sea watching, but it's sheltered if it's raining or windy. You do have shelter there as well. And there's often people early in the morning, there's often people there and they will help you out. They're all very friendly over there, really nice bunch.
Yep.
So you can turn left from the sea watching shelter, and this greenswood is sometimes worth a quick scan for wagtails and stuff, I think, really, and gulls.
Yeah. Gulls, wagtails, pipits, occasionally thrushes as well, especially in the autumn. Yeah, again, always worth a scan. Maybe a late yellow wagtail or wheatear can turn up on there.
Yep, definitely. And then walking further along, you can see this huge mast, and fairly near the base, you can just about make it out on the photograph here. There's a kestrel box.
Yep.
So that's always worth a look. And of course, being the tallest thing in the area, always have a scan up the top to see if anything is up there, having a perch, maybe a raptor. So again, I've had kestrel on there before. I think I've had a peregrine sat there before, actually, a couple of years ago. So it's always worth a look, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, all these places, even if you just have a 2-second scan, doesn't need long, but yeah, you never know what might be just sitting up there waiting to, especially in autumn migration, because if you've got birds coming in off the sea, raptors and stuff will sit and wait for tired birds to come and get to the coast. So yeah, always worth a look.
In fact, talking about gulls, I think I've just spotted a black-headed gull down there. There you go.
Yeah, there's another one to the right there as well, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's behind my camera. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Right, okay. So moving on. So we're walking along the front here now. We've gone past the mast and we're heading down towards the sluice. So if you just basically keep to the sea wall, and you've got the sluice and you've got the brook that runs behind. So this is the sluice looking out to sea. And the brook, if you turn around and walk 20 yards, 10 yards, you'll be able to look over and look up or down the brook. And these areas are really good, aren't they?
Yeah, so the sluice, as Matt showed there, you've got nice at low tide. There's quite a lot of rocks offshore, so great for roosting gulls. And occasionally the odd rarity turns up there, maybe a Caspian gull if you're lucky. And then the sluice is a great place for one of the first places to check for purple sandpiper and things like turnstone, which feed on the seaweedy sort of covered rocks and concrete there.
Yeah, rock pipits in the winter as well. You'll
Yes.
quite often get a rock pipit on the sluice if you're lucky.
And then the brook, the brook is good for probably the best place for kingfisher. Or one of the best places for kingfisher. And there's, sometimes you hear water rail and moorhen, Chetty's warbler. Again, it's just a nice bit of rebed habitat there and scrub. So again, worth checking all seasons.
Absolutely. Little grebe, reed warbler, all sorts of things you can get down here. And this scrub down here is superb. So that's the sluice and the brook. Now we're going to head to the main hide. So from this sluice, you're going to turn around, and behind you, you'll notice this hut here. And this can be quite good to actually stand literally where my mouse pointer is there, because from there you can do some sea watching if the weather's bad. the big hut gives you some shelter. But you noticed on the previous map, we're going to be going down to the Hyde. We're going to be looking at the main scrape, Leon's Marsh, the ditch, the pool, and the fields beyond. So let's have a quick look. To the right of the hut, there's this gate. Again, it's quite a steep step down from here, so just be careful. And then you can have a wander down the path, and you've got all this lovely scrub, haven't you?
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, you've got this little blackthorn scrub either side of the path. So again, good for warblers, both in spring and autumn. And winter birds, if they've got berries in the autumn, it's going to be good for things like fieldfare, redwing, maybe ring ouzel if you're lucky. Yeah, and this path just sort of takes you round. You can see the scrape appearing on the left-hand side there.
It's actually sometimes good to stop just around about here, I think maybe a little bit further on, and have a look at the scrape, because you get a different angle, a different view. So if you've got a scope, you can stop and have a look from this path. But eventually, as you're walking through, you'll come to this gate on the left-hand side, and as you can see through the gate, you've got the Hyde mysteriously hidden behind all the bushes. And the Hyde is one of those kind of container type hides. It's really good. It's not always open to the general public. I think unfortunately, there's been some vandalism type issues there previously, but there's often birders on site, and if they're on site, they'll obviously let you in, and they're always really helpful, as I mentioned before. Yeah. So once you're in the Hyde, that's the view you get. Yeah. And that's rather lovely, isn't it?
It's the main sort of area of fresh water on the whole site, so it's going to be attractive to waders, gulls, geese, swans, passerines as well. Things like pipits, wagtails. There's bearded tits sometimes in the reeds, chetties, warblers. Yeah, and also we're looking back towards the Chippings lay-by now, and the Chippings lay-by is in the distance there. So again, you've got some sort of height behind you as well, which is really good.
Sometimes you get water bowl down here as well, won't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's look at a couple of areas of the view in slightly better detail. So just on the left here, this area is called Leon's Marsh, and I think Leon is the chap that kind of sort of wardens the site and controls the water levels, and he's responsible for whether it floods or whether there's an edge and so on. So the local birders have named this little area of marsh after him, because I think he first kind of flooded the area. So yes, that's why it's called Leon's Marsh. And this can be really worth having a quick scan with your scope, can't it?
Absolutely, yeah, it's good. I mean, the past few years we've had quite a jack snipe and stuff there, and it's good for common snipe. Avocets in the spring and summer, and also it's just a nice wet, shallow area. So pretty much anything can turn up on there, especially wader and duck wise.
Unfortunately, on the day that we went, you can't really tell, but it was a blustery old day, wasn't it? It was grey and windy, and there was a tiny little bit of rain, but not too much.
It was pretty horrendous.
There's still birds around, isn't there? So yeah,
it's good for Mediterranean gulls as well, and you can see the waves on the scrape.
Yeah. So this is obviously a zoomed in version of the middle part of the scrape. There's an island in the middle of the scrape here, and you can just see, looking at the picture, we've got quite a few species on there, haven't we?
Yeah, so you've got shell ducks, there's oyster catcher there, black-headed gulls, cormorant, lesser black-backed gull, I think, skulking around there. I mean, obviously we've had a lot of rain this winter, so the water levels are pretty high throughout the site, but again, this varies from year to year. So
when you'll often get in the winter, you have black-tailed gobwits and various other winter waders dropping in here. Spotted redshanks you'll quite often see. Avocets through the summer as well, when the water level's a bit lower, and they like this area too.
It had coot, didn't it? It had coot.
It did, yeah. We saw coot, and coot is like a mega for Holland Haven, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's amazing. In context, yeah. For us, it's quite a common species elsewhere, but for Holland Haven, it's very rare. So,
to be fair, while I was taking these pictures, we had a bar-tailed gobwit drop in, didn't we? Which again is another nice bird to drop into the scrape.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then almost directly in front of you from the Hyde, you've got the ditch, with some lovely sort of reed bed and scrub habitat either side. And this is always worth a scan.
Yeah. So again, good for it's good for kingfisher, chetties, warblers, reed warbler, sedge warbler, it's actually quite a good place for raptors to hunt down. Sparrowhawk especially likes hunting down that channel.
Mm.
And again, you've got lots of bramble, so sedges and whitethroats, and yeah, great spot.
Yeah. You'll get
You've
reed bunting singing, and I think while we were there was a quite a large female sparrowhawk that buzzed across this channel at least a couple of times, didn't she?
Yeah, and you can see in the distance you've got an owl box. So there's a couple of owl boxes. I think they're used by jackdaws or stock doves, basically. But again, that rough grassland can be quite good for owls in the winter, especially sort of barn owl and short-eared owl.
And you can probably see towards the back here, and I think maybe on the next picture as well, as we look to the right, all the edges of this field, you can just make it out on the picture here, but there are posts all the way around. So the posts are great vantage points for raptors to sit. But this pool to the right-hand side, so we're now looking out of the hide to the right, and you're looking up towards the farm, which is where we're heading in a bit. And this pool, things drop in there. I had Gargany drop in there 3 years ago, just a male Gargany just plopped in while I was in the hide. And the area beyond is nice and waterlogged at the moment, isn't it? So that's worth a scan.
So yeah, definitely. That whole grazing marsh is definitely worth a look. And I say this year is very wet, so it's been good for Gargany, red shanks and lapwings and wimbrel. Always worth, probably the best place for wimbrel on the site there in the golf course, which we'll cover in a minute. But yeah.
And you have curlew as well in the winter. There'll be quite a few curlew out here normally as well, and geese. This is where the huge flock of white-fronted geese that were present 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of them were in this area as well. So always worth a scan, particularly wintertime, but any time of the year. So we're going to leave the hide now, and we're going to head kind of left from the hide, if that makes sense. Oh, sorry, one last picture, just looking up towards Frinton. So just to give you some bearing, you've got Frinton in the distance here. And this is if you open the right-hand flap of the hide, there's this lovely area of scrub. And again, just have the windows open, listen out, look out, and there'll be bits and pieces flying around and hopping on top. Stone chat I've had from here fairly often. It's just a really nice area to sit and view. And you can spend a good couple of hours in this hide, can't you? Cup of coffee and a sandwich. Yeah,
absolutely. Always probably the main focal point, I suppose, to Holland Haven. But as you'll see from this video, there's lots of other places to go. You can easily spend a good day, mooching about there.
Absolutely. So we're going to leave the hide, and we are going to walk up towards the wooden hide. So this is the container hide here. We're coming out, we're turning left, and we're going along the back of this field just here. And as you're going along the back of the field, there's various log piles, aren't there? Oh,
so yeah. So these, I'm not sure where the wood came from, but yeah, these are really good purchase for things like wind chats and stone chats in the sort of spring and autumn, and also a good place for things like lizards as well. Good basking spots for and again, it's surrounded by bramble, so again, going to be a sort of a bit of a migrant trap for warblers and thrushes.
Definitely well worth looking out for butterflies as well. And we had a nice kestrel along here, didn't we, a little while ago? So
yeah,
always worth a check of these. And there's 2 or 3 of these around this first field. But you walk through and you'll see in the distance, you'll see this wooden hide. And I think this wooden hide used to overlook the reed bed. The reed bed had a bit more sort of visible water, I think, back in the day. But unfortunately, as you can see, it's badly treated by some of the local people. So it's in a bit of a poor state, and it's been repaired a couple of times. And every time they repair it, I think the same thing happens to it, which is a shame. But it's still a nice area to stop and have a look down the reed bed. But if we walk past that, leave that behind us, and you can see these lovely reeds growing along behind the hide. We're going to go up towards the boardwalk. So the hide's here. Just keep walking through. You cut back through the next field, and then there'll be a gate, and you can get onto the boardwalk. And the boardwalk is it's fabulous, isn't it?
And again, slightly raised, so you get a nice view over the reed bed. And again, as we said before, it's great for the reed bed, especially the reed bed birds. Bearded tit has been here certainly earlier this year, and again, reed warbler, sedge warbler. It picks up wind chats in the autumn, and also it's great for things like reed buntings as well, and maybe kingfisher now and again passes through this area.
I think the locals regularly put out grit for the bearded tits, don't they? So it can help with their digestion, and there have been, 2 or 3 bearded tits in the reeds in times gone by, and I think a few of them have been ringed as well, haven't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Simon Cox does do a little bit of ringing in that sort of reed bed area, and he does produce. I think it turns up things like red poles, lesser red poles, and other species. So yeah, it's a good one. Again, another good worth walking through there.
Definitely. I mean, the good thing with the Naze and Holland Haven is that they're going to be places where birds will be coming in off the sea, and they'll want to land, they'll want to rest, they'll want to feed. And there's so much varied habitat for them to do that. You never know what's going to turn up at any of these points around the site. And we've tried to do this in a route that you could walk this route, as we did, in a nice big circle and cover all of the major areas. So we're going to leave the boardwalk. So the boardwalk's off to the left here. You come out at the end of the boardwalk, and this is the gate you come out of. And then we're going to walk along the lower part of the, below the seawall. And this is an area where you can sometimes see stone chats and wheat here as well, hopping around on the ground. It's quite a frequented area by cyclists and dog walkers and stuff, but it's still worth scanning the posts for birds. But we're heading up towards the raised tee. So this is the path that goes along the bottom here. And it runs parallel to the golf course. So you can scan the golf course as well. We'll have some pictures of the golf course later on. But the raised tee is this area just here. And the seawall, what we did is we walked along the bottom here, then we walked up the steps, and we just went and had a look up from the top behind the raised tee. And the view that you get is along the other side of the seawall up towards Frenton. You can see how violent the waves were that day. But this can be a good place to look for the purple sandpipers as well, can't it? They can come up this way.
So yeah, and things like turnstone, and obviously this sort of sticks out. You can see to the top right of the picture here, that sticks out quite a little bit. So if there's any birds like terns and gulls passing northwards or southbound, it's quite a good place to pick up species before they sort of bounce off and go out to sea.
Yeah, I mean, I've had kittiwake sat on the seawall here, just having a bit of a rest. We had wimbrel sat on the railings as well. So always worth a good scan. And then you can scan the other way, look back over the golf course, as I said. And the golf course has produced some birds in the past, hasn't it? Things like ring ouzel and wimbrels and curlew. So, things can drop in anywhere. But we're going to be heading from the raised tee. We're going to go back down the steps, and we're going to go across this bridge. You can see the footpath sign, and we're heading up towards the farm. So that's the bridge. And the first time I did this, it seemed really weird because there's people playing golf, whacking balls around and shouting for, and I've got my scope and camera and binoculars and just thinking, can I walk across here? But yeah, you can. And
just be aware of they are playing golf, so just be aware of golf balls and and that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you hear someone shout 4, they're not counting curlew. They're probably telling you to get out of the way. But you can see our mystery guest here. So walking next to Steve is John Ward, John of his Mindful Moment Ward, and he kindly accompanied us for the day. And we'll find out why in a few minutes, won't we?
We will.
So you walk across the golf course carefully, and then we're heading across the golf course. We're heading all the way up through the fields, all the way up to the farm. So here we go, walking through the fields.
And then we look very bored there, don't we?
No, I don't think so. You look pretty focused there, I think, on a mission. It's a bit uphill and it is a little bit of a trek, but it's well worth the effort when you get up there. So that's the view that you get back from the top.
Yeah.
Just rolling fields and just beautiful colours. We had loads of skylarks up here, didn't we?
Yeah, it's good for skylarks, and I'd imagine there's things like reed bunting up there. And again, we've got some height, so you can scan the whole area from there. So if you're looking out for passing raptors, maybe marsh harrier, red kite, buzzards, yeah, great place to scan from.
Definitely. And the next picture is going to give you a clue as to what might be coming up later on. There you go, John in action.
There you go. With his fairy microphone.
But you're going up really for the paddocks, aren't you? So these paddocks have produced some good birds in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly had redback shrike in the past, and it's good for warblers. Sort of
Dartford warbler. There was Dartford warbler, I think, last year in here. Ring ouzels have been seen in here as well. And as Steve said, I mean, on the day that we were there, we had hirundines overhead. We had loads of swallows because there's barns in the farm. There were swifts flying over as well. Always the chance of the raptors. And I think this area is quite good for corn bunting as well, particularly during the winter months. You get small flocks of corn bunting if you're lucky. So another view from the paddocks as well. It's one of those places. It's not huge at the top here. It's just a little walk through to the farm, and there's a church behind. But it's well worth stopping and scanning because different angles can produce different results.
Absolutely.
You've got rather a lovely pond, which is.
I mean, it's good. I mean, obviously, again, things like moorhen, coot may be on there, but again, it's surrounded by sort of willows. So again, maybe a good place for things like yellow-browed warbler in the autumn, Pallas's warbler, maybe flycatchers. Pied flycatcher looks like sort of those wet areas. So maybe spotted flycatcher. So yeah, again, certain times of the year, definitely worth scanning those trees. We
had some lovely close views of greenfinch while we're up there, which isn't a bird you see a lot, regularly nowadays. And obviously always the chance of a woodpecker in here as well. So always a good area to scan, and it's a working farm, so just be a bit careful. But yes, fantastic. So that's the farm area, and those bits in green are kind of the two paddock areas that you can stop and have a look at, and the church is just here, so you don't really need to go much beyond there, to be fair. So as we're coming away from the farm, this is where the pond is, and you can turn right just after the pond, and you can come back down a different route, and that route takes you through the other side of the fields. So different area to have a look from. You can easily set up a tripod and a scope and have a quick scan of the fields, and you might get red-legged partridge. I don't know if there's been greys up there before, possibly.
No, to be honest, but again, they certainly could turn up there. No doubt about it.
And obviously all the finches and bits and pieces as well. So plenty of things to look at, and hares. Quite often you'll get a hare up here as well. So yeah. And then the fields turn to this slightly more vegetated path, which is nice to walk along with the close scrub. And we had chetties along there, didn't we? We had a couple of chetties. Yeah.
And you can imagine things like maybe yellowhammer turning up along there, or as you said earlier, corn bunting, good sort of spot for those, and obviously skylarks. Yep,
definitely. And then as you walk along the end, you eventually come to this little bridge, and this is basically the way back onto towards the sea wall. And it says, please follow the black and white posts. So you're walking back across a different part of the golf course here, but it's quite easy. You can see there's a series of black and white posts, and they're dotted throughout the golf course, and you just simply follow them and stay close to them. And to be fair, everyone was friendly, and they all stopped. If they were ready to take shots, they could see us walking past. They all stopped and waited. So yeah, perfectly safe to walk across, but just be careful, as Steve mentioned earlier. Then when you get through to the other side, you can go back up onto the seawall and look back across and have another scan of this end of the golf course. And you can turn around and you've got French Point, yes. Which I did. I was going to look up the proper name of this and I forgot. So
no, the locals did tell us, didn't they? But I've forgotten as well.
Yeah, I've forgotten as well. But it's got a proper French name. But I think locally it's just called French Point. And yes, so this is just a landmark more than, I suppose when the tide's low, it's worth scanning the rocks because you might have the purple sandpipers and turnstones, but it's more of a landmark area. So if you see something, you can say it was near French Point. And in fact, the perps like to roost near here, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. The sea walls are a really good place to look for the purple sandpipers. If they're not down at the sluice, then they'll often be seen up here.
And these little sort of concrete raised ridges of the breakers, there'll be little birds, rock pipits, turnstones, purple sandpipers, that kind of thing. And it's quite easy to lose them, particularly from distance. They'll kind of be foraging backwards and forwards and disappear. I've had wheatear hopping around in here as well. So again, just a nice place to stand and look from. And of course, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to head back down towards the pillbox. So you've got French Point here. We're going back down towards the pillbox. So the pillbox is located on the field behind the scrape. So we're kind of roughly coming back round on the circle now. And as you're walking back through, of course, if you want to get a better view of things like purple sandpipers and turnstones, This is one way you can do it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but John was obviously feeling quite athletic and decided to jump up there, and you were having a good old peer over as well.
He's younger than I am, and he can
yeah.
do that. I can't do that.
No, I wasn't even going to try. To be fair, I don't know if the wall is strong enough for me, but that's a whole different story.
And also, I've got the scope on my back, so I didn't want to topple over into the sea.
Well, you still managed to get a picture, though, didn't you? There you go. There's proof that you were taking pictures. So yeah,
on tiptoe there.
And then walking back through. So the pillbox, if we could see through the pillbox, the hide is basically directly behind it. So you can see the scrape here. You've got Leon's Marsh just off the left-hand side of the photograph. These are the flooded fields. So from the higher elevation, with a scope, you can get a better view of the field, and you might see things that you would have missed if you'd been lower down. So well worth stopping. You can walk up the steps and sit down the other side and have a cup of coffee and a sandwich, or you can simply just walk around the front and stand on the grass, which is what we did during the Big County Birdwatch, isn't it? And I think it was from up here, wasn't it from up here that the previous Big County Birdwatch, we found the pectoral sandpiper, didn't we, up here?
We did. Absolutely right, yeah. And we had jack snipe as well, didn't we, from up there as well?
Yeah, so with a scope, I think it was Nick Weston found the peck sand right over the back here.
Yeah.
And then you located the jack snipe. It was over here somewhere, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that said, the hide's good because it does give you closer views of the scrape. But if you want an overall view of the whole area, and with a scope, you just want to be out, getting a good 360 view, this is the place to go.
And there you go. I mean, that's a nice view of the whole scrape area with better elevation. So, for example, this area just in here, you can't really see this from the hide, but you can from on top.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the pillbox. Now we're heading back. We're going to go past the sluice, but instead of going back the way we came from, we're going to turn right opposite the sluice, or just past the sluice. And this is the path that we're turning right on, and this is going through the mounds. So you've got these big sort of mounds of earth and scrub, and there's been redback shrike here as well before, I think, hasn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. And there's, say again, warblers. It's quite a good place for adder as well. And again, there's white throats, lesser white throats. There's a few pine trees there, so maybe good chance of goldcrest and firecrest at certain times of the year. You
walk around the corner here, you've got a gate at the end here, and this is the area which Steve said good for goldcrest and firecrest.
Yeah.
Particularly as you go through this gate, you turn right, you've got the entrance to the sewage works. So these tall sort of fir trees here, they're well worth listening out for the crests in. I've had them there several times before. And obviously with sewage works, you can't go in, but you can have a scan through the gate. And sewage works always tend to attract things like wagtails and pipits as well, don't they?
They do, yeah. A good place for chiff chaff as well.
And then just to the left here, you've got the feeders. So the feeders are stocked up by the local birders. So again, well done, huge well done to Mick Rodwell and all the guys that cover the area regularly. Yeah. And worth stopping here because you can sometimes get, well, what can you get there?
Oh, it's probably the best place to see coaltit on the site. I mean, not again, it's not a rare bird elsewhere, but for Holland Haven, it's pretty scarce. So best place for that. And again, you got feeders, so maybe sparrowhawk hunting through there. And again, it's just sort of scrubby area. So flycatchers, maybe woodpeckers. Yep,
and that's obviously the way you can view the feeders. You're quite close, to be fair, behind the gate. You can have a nice old view. Just stand still, and there's always stuff flitting around here, like my mouse pointer is, going backwards and forwards, and up in the trees as well. So nice place just to stop for a few minutes. But carrying on, we're going to go past I think I've put 5-bar gate on here, but it's actually got 6 bars, the gate we're going to have a look at in a second. And we're going to go round to the raised platform. So you can see we've nearly come full circle. We're nearly there. So the 6-bar gate, I can't count.
The locals always call it the 5-bar gate.
Well, I think they do, yes. I don't know if there's an in-joke there or something. I'm not sure, but yeah. But the area behind here is just worth stopping here for 2 minutes, isn't it?
Absolutely. Again, it's nice and sheltered. So even easterly breeze, there's a little bit of shelter there. And again, it can be good for blackcaps, garden warbler, flycatchers, crests.
Winter months, you get redwing in here and maybe got a fieldfare or two and other thrushes, blackbird, song thrush. So nice area just to stop and look out of the wind.
Yep.
Then walking past the gate, you turn right and you go down this path through the orchard. This is the area that burned. There was a fire, quite a bad fire there, wasn't there, a year or two ago?
Yeah, I think it was last year. I think it was
Last year,
during that hot spell. Yeah.
But it's all starting to kind of regenerate, isn't it? While we were there, you could see that. And just over to the right-hand side here, you can see some more sort of scrape type area, and that's roughly where we're heading. So when you get to the bottom here, we turn right, and you turn right, and you'll see the raised platform. So the raised platform, it's only really room for maybe a couple of people to stand there. But when you walk up, you can have a look over the top, and depending on how tall you are, you can get a view of the water behind, and this is quite a nice area to stand and scan from. And we've had a few bits there actually, haven't we, recently?
It was good. It was certainly good for rough during the big county bird watch, and there's been gargling on there, and it just like get a few waders, drop in black-tailed godwits, for example, gulls. I mean, the bushes are growing up a little bit there, so viewing isn't particularly easy. But if you can't view from that raised platform, you can just walk back up the slope a little bit, just to give you a little bit of height. Yeah,
you can sort of stand in here somewhere carefully and just look across. You get a slightly better view from on top.
Gives you a height. And again, you're looking back towards the chippings lay-by this direction, so just to give you a sort of context of where you're looking.
Yeah, you can see the road over here. Right, so that's the raised platform, that's the view. Then come off the raised platform, and basically, instead of going back up the hill, you just keep walking straight, kind of parallel to the back of the site. So we're going to be walking from the raised platform, here, and then back along the back to the dipping pond, and then back to the car. So this back edge here, you just go through the gap between the hedgerows. Nice area just to listen out for all the common stuff and rarities as well. They've had red-breasted flycatcher down in this area, I think, before.
They did, and I remember seeing a subalpine warbler there a few years, or 7 or 8 years back, along that back edge of the car park. So again, just goes to show on this site that every inch is worth checking.
Definitely. And this is the back edge of the field. So there's like a field where people have picnics and bits and pieces, and the cars are just behind us now. But even this hedgerow along here, as Steve says, well worth checking. Willow warbler, this time of year, you may well get willow warblers flitting through there. There's been yellow-browed warblers in this area before. So always worth a look. And the geese that I mentioned previously, they also like the fields behind here. So you can get gaps in the trees and scan through and get a view of what's behind. But we're heading just into the corner. So we've gone left again, and you've got a bit of fence in the very corner of the field. And then this is the entrance to the dipping pond area. And dipping pond, it's just worth going and standing in there again, just for a couple of minutes to see what's in there. Yeah. We've had yellow-browed in there before, haven't we?
We did. It's a nice lot of willow scrub, and it's sort of, again, it's quite sheltered. So it's a great place. It's a good place for willow emerald damselfly as well. I know it's not a bird, but always good to see sort of autumn dragonfly. But yeah, certainly warblers. Again, nice willows there. So there's quite a few insects. So
and there's even a chance of water vole in there as well, isn't there? You never know.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's kind of it, really, because when you turn around, you're back in the car park. So that's the overall area that we've covered. We sort of came this way and went right the way up the top to the farm, and then came back and kind of cut back in and came along the back. So it is a sort of a weird shaped circle, but there's lots of points that you can stand and watch from. You don't have to do the whole lot, of course. A lot of people just stay in this area, and this area yields fantastic results. But if you've got the time in your hand, you can go up to the farm. You can even walk all the way along and go meet Paul up on the Greenswood at Frinton and do a bit of sea watching maybe, because this path goes right the way through. So really nice area. Hopefully that's given people some ideas as to where some of these locations are. And we've got a little bit of a surprise now, haven't we?
And also, just while we're chatting, Matt, Holland Haven birding. If you Google Holland Haven birding, there's a really good website, up-to-date sightings from Holland Haven. That's they're updated daily. So yeah, and also there's a bit about ringing on the website and other information. So and hopefully this video, someone, as Richard's just asked Matt, this video will take out of this show and have it standalone guide as part of our guide features. Yeah, we will. I'll get that done in the next few days, hopefully. So yeah, this is the site that Steve mentioned, and
I think Nick Rodwell updates this every single day, just with the key sightings. So, I mean, you can see there's obviously been common sandpiper recently, no sign today, tawny owl yesterday, and there's just a catch up. So if anyone does want to visit the site, as Steve mentioned, just go to hollandhavenbirding.blogspot.com, or if you Google Holland Haven birding, all one word, that will be the top link. You can just see what's been around recently, plus all the other information that's down the side here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Right.
So little surprise.
Yes, as we said, John came with us. And of course, as we know, John has his mindful moments, doesn't he?
He does.
Yes. So if I can find it, hold on.
Yeah, it was
John,
nice.
very, very kindly.
Really nice spending the day with John. Yeah, top guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So it was nice to see how he gets his photos and stuff, which was good.
Definitely, and I know that John went back as well because the weather wasn't brilliant on the day that we were there. So I know he's gone back and done some extra footage. So massive thanks to John. He spent a lot of time doing this. Hope you all enjoy it. I've actually called this John's little piece of Haven.
Very good. I like that.
This lasts about 6 or 7 minutes, folks, but I hope you enjoy it.
Whoa.
We should have just played that instead
You
of
know what? People would much prefer to watch John's video than us waffling on about pillboxes and stuff.
wasn't that lovely? Really nice, really nice.
It's amazing.